Alright, so we're back in Florida. I spent a lot of time in Montana for the summer, but we're back to play ice car. So a lot of people said they missed the Snapchats, so we're back at it. I haven't drifted since like last October. I went to the Freedom Factory, and on my last run of the night, I exploded my second gear of my transmission, and then I thought that was it. I replaced the trans, went for a test drive, got out there in the middle of the street, and just something let go. It was awful noise. Some gave me a pretty good suspicion that it was my differential. As we'll go underneath, I'll show you. So underneath the car, looking at the diff cover, it's like something wanted out of there real bad. So we'll start taking off these bolts. I started with that one, then I decided to take the video. So I expect it to be all nice and sparkly and colorful when it drops into the pan. So I did replace the transmission. I'm still thinking about dropping the trans again, having it rebuilt, put it back in, but if I could just do this for now and be able to drive the car, I'll be happy. So this was a welded diff. You can see there's a lot of weld in there, but it was also plated on one side, and this is that plate. Just that much damage to a big thick steel. That big green gear there is probably what did those grooves and just ripped this thing apart. Everything online says don't plate these differentials, but I don't think that's what actually failed. And it was a big chunk of steel that was welded in there, and it kind of helps keep everything from rotating, but it is insane to see. I think that bearing exploded, and chunk of that, or that happening, may have been what ripped the plate out, but I think all of that happening together is what destroyed the transmission. So yeah, catastrophic failure. So now I got some homework to do. It's a little bit different damage than what I was expecting. I thought the ring and pinion, I thought the teeth on those were just going to be sheared off, and it was going to be kind of an easier fix, just replace the gears. Yeah, a little bit of research to do now. So, found the problem. Now I gotta figure out how I'm gonna fix the problem. Alright, so after a lot of procrastinating hours later, I finally got the rear end out. So, I went ahead and already took the differential out. You can still see there's a lot of debris and stuff down there. What is that? Oh, more debris. So, yeah. Looking at the actual differential. This thing's kind of crazy. It's like missing a tooth here. This bearing here is the one that exploded. No, it's not. Yeah, that one is. So I'm not going to try and like do much with any of this. As long as the actual axle is still usable, I'm going to go with a new Ford Performance differential. Going to go with a 410 ring and pinion. We're going to go to a 30-line axle, and yeah, this stuff's pretty crazy to look at. So that's the little carrier housing that snapped. This whole bolt, maybe not that one. One of these bent. Yeah, it won't even come out of there. That thing's foobarred. There it is. Can't really tell, but that thing's pretty torqued. Kind of worries me that those guys might actually be hurt, so yeah, as long as this axle is still usable. Kind of worried. I saw this and it was kind of scared me, but it's got one similar right here, so I guess that's supposed to be a thing. So first steps to getting back on the racetrack, trying to get the car back together. Alright, so for the rear end, I've got all the parts ordered. They should be here like Thursday, so a couple days waiting on that. Right now, while I've got a whole bunch of room for activities under the car, I'm doing the tedious tasks. So all this here is like a really thick sound deadening that covers up the metal, so that way when the wheels are spinning and throwing up dirt and rocks and stuff, it's not echoing inside the car. Well, all that sound deadening adds weight. So it was a very tedious task, but an angle grinder and a wire wheel, and this is what you get. Yeah, probably about 45 minutes or so of just sitting here and grinding all that away. I can't get inside that seam. I'll probably just end up leaving that anyways, just because it's a pinch weld and it creates this big crease, and I just know dirt and stuff's gonna get stuck in there, so I might as well just leave the sealant. So everything else is gonna get primer and painted. I tried putting like a little plastic baggie over the brakes to keep all this dust and stuff out of it. A lot of dust. So yeah, this stuff adds weight. So it is going to be annoying inside the car. As you're going down track, there's all these little pebbles and rocks and tire debris and all sorts of stuff that's going to be echoing, but at least the car's lighter. Free horsepower. So we'll get this side done, and we'll start taking off like these little random brackets. There's like a quad shock that like goes to the back of the axle. Take stuff like that off. I'm going to trim these because this is just a big flap of metal that doesn't actually do anything. So that'll end up getting cut off. These little brackets that connect to the crash support, those are going to get cut off because it still has a great big one right there. So I don't need these little pieces. Those will get cut off. This little fin right here, just this really thin piece, that'll end up getting cut off. Basically just trying to do a lot of weight reduction for the rear end of the car. It's kind of my goal right now. Alright, so we're still working on the car. I'm starting to paint the wheel well. You know, I went in with that wire wheel and it kind of exposed a lot of bare metal, so we want to paint it, cover it up, keep it from rusting. Turn the light on, and so here's our car. There's our wheel well. We did go in, we cut off these little bottom fins, so I cut that off. Remember there used to be this big kind of square piece here that I cut off, and then all those little pieces of metal that went in and connected to the bumper, I took those off, and then yeah, the whole floor here was just a mess with that sealant sound deadening coating. So we got all that cleaned up. Now we're starting to paint. That's that side. Come over here, we'll show you the passenger side. So yeah, now you can see the amount of bare metal and why we need to paint it. I gotta have the garage door closed because the breeze is just blowing through here, and I didn't want a bunch of overspray everywhere, so we're just kind of getting high in the garage on paint fumes. So now I gotta mask this off, clean the metal, mask it, cover up the car. So almost done, but same thing. Went in, we cut off that little square chunk of metal, cut the fin off here. Again, all the little pieces of metal back there. Might actually call it a break. I'm getting kind of a headache from huffing paint fumes. Here's everything we cut off though. So all that metal, and then Doesn't look like a lot, but that's probably 5 pounds or so, and then probably another 10 pounds worth of metal. So, you know, it's not a lot, but in the grand scheme of things, it all adds up. Alright, so I showed you guys the other side last night. This is my passenger side. I got my blanket. I got everything masked off. So, getting ready to paint. Alright, so I finished painting the passenger side wheel well. So that's all done, it's dry. Now I'm cutting more stuff off the car. The idea of make light, then go fast. So, my driver's side door, I've already started. It used to be a big piece of metal that would come out like way out here, you know, come down, and it was all kind of jagged, and then it went up here. So I cut that out. There was a little bracket here that came down. It wasn't actually attached to anything other than the door bar. I'm going to keep this door bar because if I ever get like door tapped or anything while drifting, that'll help keep my door from caving in. So you look on the passenger side and that little piece right here is still attached, so I got to cut that one out. So cut out that part on the passenger door, and then I took the rear window louver out, sitting right here. I'm going to cut out the speaker tray. So this whole thing's going to get cut out. I'm going to leave this little bar here. It's kind of tubular, pretty good little structural piece that once I decide to do a firewall, it'll give me something to work off of. But for now, I'm just going to get rid of this top part right here. Alright, so that's all done over there. And then this is all done. My little pile of scrap parts is getting bigger. It's probably no more than, I don't know, 30 pounds or so of cut off material. So, I don't know, not a lot of weight, but that's pretty good diet for most people. Alright, I think we're finally ready to start working on this rear end again. Got my new main caps from the machine shop. Bought some offline. They had to be machined down to be able to fit the size. I've got all my other new parts, which I'm pretty excited about. The new axles, 31 spline, bigger, beefier, heavier duty. All the bearings, brand new differential, brand new 410 ring and pinion, shiny cover, and all the brand new tools to be able to make it happen. So it's pretty exciting. I cleaned out the entire garage. I've got a nice clean work environment. I've got my air compressor ready. So I think we're set. I rebuilt an engine. I think this is a little more tedious. First step is bearing separator, pulling the shim off the old pinion. There's a little spacer between the bearing and the gear that I need. So, step one. Alright, so I got that little spacer taken off the backside of the pinion gear. So that's him. Now we're kind of breaking into all of our bearings, and I'm getting the new bearing pressed onto the new differential. I got a little race up here, and got a little lubed up with some gear oil in there. So we'll start pressing them on. Alright, so both bearings are now pressed on. Now I gotta start thinking about putting on this ring gear. Ooh. Alright, so again, bearings are pressed on. The ring gear is pressed on and everything is torqued down. I did it in a sequence where I started at 50 and then went to 100 foot-pounds. And all threads Loctite, so. Getting through it. So, I was pretty stoked with all the tools that I got for this job. I was pretty excited about having my own slide hammer and like bearing puller kit. Everything I got was from Harbor Freight. The Pittsburgh automotive slide hammer does not fit the Pittsburgh axle bearing puller set. It just does not thread on. It's way off. It was really unfortunate. The bearing pullers that come in the slide hammer kit are kind of weird, and I don't trust them after more than a couple uses. The slide is actually very small. It doesn't fit well in your hand, and my thumb is kind of like shaking. I don't know if can't really, but yeah, that was super uncomfortable to sit there and just pound on for a while. Hurt my hand. Now you can see it. So, yeah, I mean, it was actually kind of lucky because I was able to get both bearings out in one piece. Usually these things kind of explode and come all apart, but this is like the puller that comes in the slide hammer kit, and then have it thread onto here, but this is way too small to thread into here. I was really excited to be able to use these guys because these will always work. That guy's gonna wear out pretty quickly. Plus, he only sits on the inside of the bearings. He doesn't actually get all the way to the outer race, which is kind of dumb. It's just that little like piece there pushes everything out, and it opens up on the inside of the bearing. So that threads in as a male, slides into this piece. These guys here are female. Well, I can take this piece off. Then, yeah, the reason my hand hurts is this guy doesn't fit well. So to like try and get any good leverage on it, it was just like grabbing it way up here and then having it bash into like the soft part of my thumb. And I just wrapped this rag around it and was kind of using that as a little bit of cushion. But yeah, you don't get a lot of leverage. There's not a lot of slide room here. It's not very heavy. So 3 out of 10 stars on the slide hammer kit. The fact that the tools aren't usable together, it's kind of lame. I may have missed something when I was at Harbor Freight, but just grabbing stuff off the shelf, that's kind of unfortunate. But at least that part's done. So again, we got the seals and everything out of the different out of the housing. So seals and bearings are out. Now we gotta start cleaning up the tubes, get them just clear of all the debris, and then we start putting in more bearings and more races. All right, so I've got this thing about as clean as I want to get it. Kind of got a little carried away with it. Like the tubes are pretty gross. There's like this really thick gunk just kind of built up on the bottoms of them. So it's kind of hard to get out. But then I started to find that like the RTV that goes across the top of the, I guess not the back of the housing, RTV was stuck at like the very bottoms of all the holes. So kind of like thick little pieces too, like stuff that could actually stop the bolts from being able to seat properly. So I had to go through. Almost all of them had that really thick rubber at the bottom, so gotta take care of. I think this thing's about as clean as I can get it. And now we gotta start putting in the new bearing race, one for both sides, and we can start trying to get the pinion installed. So I haven't done a lot of updates lately, but I made it quite a ways. I got the pinion on, so that guy in there. So I showed the bearing races that those were pressed in. I pressed the new bearing onto the pinion, and then we did the little seal, we did the oil slinger, we did all sorts of stuff. But then we got this flange and the nut put on. This nut is like a one-time use only. It cannot come off, or if you do, you gotta replace that nut. Same thing is inside that little pinion, there's this crush washer. Between this washer and that nut, it was hard. Socket. To be able to get that nut on, I had this breaker bar with this whole pipe. I had it set between the bolts and then like to the ground, keeping it from rotating. And then I had that breaker bar with this big tube and a 1 1/16, and just all of my body weight trying to get to go down. So there's no more play in this. I now need to go to the store and get a 1/4 to 3/8 adapter, so that way I can use this gauge, and that gauge will tell me how much rotational force it takes to get this guy to go. I need between 16 and 27 inch-pounds of force to make this thing rotate. Any less, and I need to go more. If it's too much, then I'm screwed and I have to replace everything. So that's fun. So I really hope I did it right. So I get to go to work tomorrow, and hopefully after work I can get this thing done. Pretty impressed with how far we got today. From getting this whole thing back from machine shop to getting it all cleaned up, ready to go, and getting the pinion on. I think it's pretty good. Fingers crossed this all works on the first try. Alright, so I had a really long day at work and I don't feel like working on the axle, but I did stop at the store and I got those adapters. So it's 1/4 inch adapter going into 3/8 to 1/2 inch? I don't know. Yeah, so I got this whole thing to go, and again, it's the rotational force on the gauge. So I should say it's actually called preload, but so. Alright, so with that there, you can see we're at 0, and as I start to turn it, we're currently at like 9 or 10 inch-pounds. Need to be between 16 and 26 inch-pounds. So that means I need to go back with my whole breaker bar cheater setup and start cranking down on this guy again, check it again, and once it gets in that little once it's the spec. But I'm tired, so tomorrow. Alright, so back to working on the car. I've already started using the cheaters and the breaker bars trying to get the nut tightened on, and you know, from where I was last night where it was like 10 inch-pounds, I probably gave it like 1/4 of a turn. 3 different segments where I was doing kind of like a small like 1/8, or as long as I even felt it move, I would check it again, and just within a little bit it took in a lot of resistance. So now when we're looking at it, we're just under what I'd say is like 25. Go the other way. Alright, so now we've got the differential just kind of sitting in place. We've got our new bearing. We got a shim on this side, and I've got the same size shim, but it's kind of just like pieced together to 0.27 of an inch. So we'll fill that space. I'll check that doesn't have any kind of side-to-side wiggle room, and then we'll bolt it down and we'll make sure that there's enough play in its rotation. So we're getting there. Alright, so we got the differential in place. We've got our main caps. These are what we had machined. They're holding everything in. I'm supposed to torque these bolts down before doing this part, but just kind of save myself a little bit of headache. I just kind of have them tight, just kind of snugged into place, and I have my little clamp up there. We have our gauge, and he's pressing against the tooth there. So we're a little bit off, but you can see we're at 0, and then we go just over 10. So let me actually correct that for a second. Alright, so for this measurement, this is measured in thousandths of an inch. We're supposed to be between 8 and 12 thousandths. So now you can see we're actually on 0. and we're right at 10. So we're dead nuts in the middle between 8 and 12. That is just perfect. So now I should actually be like checking this in 4 different places, make sure that holds true, and then once I torque it down, then again we have to make sure that it still holds true. So, but first go, yeah. And I not really first try. I've done a lot of these different shims, trying different spacing, try and get that perfect backlash, but yeah. Alright, so we're kind of at the last step. This is like the final tell sign that everything's correct. We went through and we kind of painted some of the ring gears to kind of see where the contact patch is. So, this is our drive side, that's our coast side, and you can see I've got some more paint in there, and some more paint in there. So once I rotate it around, I'll be able to see where the paint was rubbed off and where my 2 gears actually contact each other. As long as it's right in the very center, down and centered, then we're good. If it's like out to the heel or to the toe, if it's to either end too much, then we gotta make a lot of changes. I really hope we don't need to, because our backlash is perfect, and worst case scenario, I have to remove the pinion gear and either move it forward or backward to make more contact. So that would be devastating. So fingers crossed. So again, this is our coast side. Here's our drive side. These are areas where there's excess paint from the areas that I did paint, and you can see where it kind of comes in, feathers out, and we're more to the toe side, which is good. If you're too far out here, you run the risk of breaking off the teeth. Coast side, perfect, right in the middle. Rotate a little bit more, and if I rotate around, you can actually see the painted areas. So again, here's our again, right in the middle, starts early and then feathers out. Absolutely perfect. Could not ask for any better. From the pinion preload to the backlash to that gear tooth pattern, just perfect. So now we've got to start putting it back in the car. I do need to do these. I got new upper bushings. I need to press those in, and I'm also going to do new upper rear control arms. I've had them sitting in a box forever. I've never installed them, so now I've got the space. So I'll probably end up putting this in tomorrow when I just feel more like it, and so stoked. Can't tell you how excited I am. There's a lot of stress in every little detail to this thing, making sure it's perfect and in spec. Alright, so I don't think I did any updates the other day. So I think I showed you guys all this. I've got everything put together. I got like perfect backlash, perfect gear tooth pattern, but what I didn't show was installing the new bearing, the new seal, and then the axles. So the axles are pretty hard to get in. It's such a tight fit for the gearing inside the diff that it's kind of hard to get them in, but you know, they're there now. I put in the new rear lower control arms, so the red guys here, got those installed, and these guys, I forgot about those, new bushings. So these are a pain. These are hard to put in. I had these sitting in the freezer all day, and then I heated I just realized that those are rear upper control arms, not rear lower. So I knew rear upper arms. Yeah, these bushings here, these are a pain. let the bushing sit in the freezer all day to let it shrink. I heated up the housing to let it expand, and then just hammered it in. And it didn't quite work to plan. Not as nicely as I wanted it to, but they're in. So right now I've got a new gasket. I've got my new diff cover, all nice and shiny. So I'm getting ready to put that on. We'll fill it full of fluid. Then we're gonna start putting it back in the car. Kind of annoying. So putting the diff cover on, this top bolt, or whichever one I do first, doesn't line up properly. And it kind of looks like it should, but it is just off just enough to be able to cross thread the bolt. So it is just a little short. That's a little annoying. All the rest of them line up perfect, but just a little off. So now we're going again. Okay, there we go. So top and bottom are on. Just had to go through it with a file a couple times. Just kind of rounded it out more. Alright, so the axle, got it put onto the transmission jack. This thing is heavy. Like AF heavy. But it's in place. So now I just gotta start jacking it up. Get the upper control arms, the top, lower control arms, and then we gotta redo our paint hard bar. And yeah, we're getting there.